The old man at the gas station warned me, you know. He had eyes like cracked marbles and smelled of stale coffee and something else. Damp earth. "Don't go poking around the old Miller place," he'd rasped, his voice a dry rustle of leaves. "Some things are buried for a reason." Of course, I didn't listen. I was a city boy, an urban explorer with a YouTube channel to feed, and the legend of the Miller bunker was just too juicy to pass up. They said Old Man Miller was a doomsday prepper, but not the usual kind. He wasn't preparing for bombs or zombies. He was preparing for something else, something he believed was coming from below. Finding the entrance was the first challenge. It wasn't in the dilapidated farmhouse or the leaning barn. It was hidden beneath a massive ancient oak tree, the one locals called the Whispering Giant, a heavy, rusted steel hatch concealed under a thick mat of roots and soil. It took me the better part of an hour with a crowbar and a lot of swearing, but finally, with a groan of tortured metal, it gave way. A blast of cold, stale air hit me, carrying a smell I couldn't quite place, a mix of wet concrete, ozone, and something faintly, sickly sweet, like rotting fruit. I switched on my headlamp, the beam cutting a sharp white cone into the oppressive darkness, and started my descent down the iron ladder. The ladder seemed to go on forever. Each rung was slick with a strange, oily condensation. The silence was absolute, broken only by my own breathing and the metallic clang of my boots. When my feet finally hit solid ground, I was in a small, circular concrete room. It was stark, empty, save for a single steel door with a heavy wheel lock, like on a submarine. Carved into the concrete above it were words scratched with desperate haste. "Don't let it hear you." A chill colder than the bunker air traced a path down my spine. This wasn't a shelter, it was a cage. Taking a deep breath, I started turning the wheel. It was stiff, protesting with loud, grinding shrieks that echoed horribly in the confined space. I winced with every turn, the old man's warning and the carving on the wall screaming in my mind. Finally, with a heavy clunk, the lock disengaged. I pulled the heavy door open, revealing a long, narrow corridor. The air from within was different. The sweet, rotting smell was stronger here, and there was a low, almost subsonic hum that vibrated through the soles of my boots. My headlamp beam danced down the hallway, revealing walls lined with shelves. But they weren't stocked with canned food or water. They were filled with journals, hundreds of them. I picked one up. The cover was damp and warped. The handwriting inside was a frantic scrawl, the ink smudged in places as if by tears or sweat. It was Miller's diary. He wrote about the songs from the deep, tremors that weren't earthquakes, and a sound he could only describe as the earth's grinding teeth. He believed a vast, ancient intelligence was waking up deep beneath his farm. He wasn't building a bunker to keep the world out. He was building it to study, to listen, to understand what was coming. The early entries were scientific, detached, but as the pages turned, the tone shifted. Paranoia bled into the ink. He wrote of whispers in the dark, of the ground itself seeming to breathe. That's when I heard it, a soft rhythmic thump, thump, thump. It was faint, distant, but it was there. It sounded like a giant heartbeat resonating through the concrete. My own heart hammered against my ribs in a frantic, panicked rhythm. I dropped the journal and pushed deeper into the bunker, my curiosity now curdled into a thick, choking dread. The corridor opened into a larger chamber, a sort of central command room. Wires snaked across the floor, connecting to oscilloscopes, reel-to-reel tape recorders, and strange, custom-built listening devices. In the center of the room was a massive hole drilled into the floor, a shaft that plunged into absolute blackness. A heavy-duty winch and cable system was mounted over it, a harness and a complex microphone array dangling at the end. Miller hadn't just been listening, he'd been going down. The thumping was louder here, a palpable pressure in the air. I noticed the tape recorders were still running, powered by a bank of humming batteries. I pressed the play button on one. Hiss and static filled the room, and then a voice. Miller's voice, but strained, breathless. He was reporting from the shaft. "Deeper now," he whispered, his voice trembling. "The songs, they're so clear. It's not just sound. It's a language. It's rewriting my thoughts." There was a long pause, filled with static and the sound of his ragged breathing. Then he screamed. Not a scream of pain, but of pure, mind-shattering terror. The tape cut out. Suddenly, the thumping stopped. The silence that followed was somehow worse. It was heavy, expectant, and from the blackness of the shaft, a new sound began to rise. It wasn't a thump. It was a soft, wet, dragging noise, a slithering. Something was coming up. My courage finally shattered. I didn't wait to see what it was. I turned and ran, my boots slipping on the slick concrete floor. The sound was getting closer, a scraping, dragging horror echoing up the corridor behind me. I scrambled through the door, my fingers fumbling with the heavy wheel. The dragging sound was just on the other side. I could hear a faint, high-pitched clicking, like 1,000 insects. I didn't stop to lock the door. I flung myself at the ladder, my hands raw, my muscles screaming in protest as I climbed out of that concrete tomb. The dragging sound followed me up the shaft, echoing, multiplying. I burst out of the hatch and into the cool night air, gasping, my lungs on fire. I didn't even try to close the heavy lid. I just ran. I ran through the woods, branches whipping at my face, the old man's words ringing in my ears. Some things are buried for a reason. I never went back for my camera or my gear. I drove until the sun came up and I never looked back. Sometimes, though, late at night when the house is quiet, I think I can still hear it. That low, rhythmic thumping deep in the earth. And I wonder if what Old Man Miller found is still down there, listening, or if it's still climbing. Thanks so much for coming along on this terrifying journey with me. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more explorations into the unknown. Stay safe out there.